Welcome to Fast Intelligent Care, the podcast for occupational therapists who want to make a real impact. Every Tuesday, we bring you fresh ideas, clear insights, and practical solutions in assistive technology. Let's make smarter, faster, and more effective care simple. Your journey starts now. In today's episode, we'll be going through the Functional Independence Measure, or FIM Score. We'll go through what is FIM and why is it important, what are some of the key areas of assessment, and how OTs might use it in practice, and then how you can get credentialed in the FIM if it is a tool that you are interested in using. Firstly, what is FIM and why is it important? FIM is Functional Independence Measure. It's an assessment tool that assesses how much assistance a person requires and how much independence they have. We have a score from 1 to 7. The lower your score, the more dependent or the more assistance you need, whereas your higher scores up to your 7 is the more independent person is. And the areas that we will assess with our functional independence measure is our self-care, sphincter control, transfers or mobility, locomotion, communication, and social cognition. So quite a few areas that are assessed, and then you can actually calculate all these scores together, your higher scores being higher levels of independence and lower scores being more dependent clients. So now we go through how OTs use the FIM in practice. We might use it as a baseline assessment. It might be used in the start of a rehabilitation program to see what is the person's current level of independence before rehabilitation starts. And then it might be used for goal setting. So someone might be able to set specific measurable goals for therapy. For example, they start out at a FIM score 4 and they want to work towards a 6. And then you could also use it for progress monitoring. So you can track a client's progress and then possibly adjust their treatment plan as needed. And then it also can assist with discharge planning. So it could support with decision making about what level of care the client needs, especially after they're being discharged. So for example, a FIM score 6 is modified independence, so we might know that the client needs to be discharged with an assistive device. When we start looking at assistive technology, we do have a place for the FIM score as well. We can actually use our FIM scores to help us select slings and hoists. Can be very beneficial, especially when you have a manufacturer that has a FIM score assigned to their products, which a lot of times is relevant with our hoist and slings. So what I'll do is I'll give you a brief outline of what the FIM might look like when you're looking at it for assistive technology. When we look at our 7 levels of independence, I'll start with our level 7. So this is just looking at FIM relating to hoist and slings. We're just looking at the one area of the FIM, which is transfers. And we'll see with the FIM, it doesn't look at transfers as a whole, but there's transfers into a bath, transfers onto a toilet, transfers into a chair. So there is different types of transfers that it looks at, but for the purpose of prescribing your hoist and slings, we just look at transfers. We don't consider social cognition, and we don't look at self-care. It's just transfers. And when we look at a score 7, that is our completely independent client, so there's no helper involved. So essentially the person is able to perform this activity, this transfer safely. They don't need any assistance. They don't need any devices. They can do it within a reasonable time, and there's no other person involved. When we get to a score 6, this is our modified independence. And this is where the person might need an assistive device, or they might need more time than the average person would require to do that transfer, or there might be some safety concerns. But essentially, they're still doing it by themselves. There's no other person involved, not even present or supervising. And that's where we get to the next score, which is our FIM 5. And this is where the person will need supervision or setup. So it could be that my client is being supervised by their carer just to make sure that they're doing it safely, or it could be that they are receiving cueing, or the environment is being set up for the activity. But no physical contact, but now there is another person involved. Now we get to our FIM score 4, which is minimal assistance. And this is where we actually do have physical contact involved. And this is where the client is doing 75% of the effort or more. The client is still doing majority of it. And that's why it's minimal assistance. My care is doing 25% or less assistance. So with this score, you're a person that's possibly doing a transfer with someone assisting them with physical guidance, but they're not actually bearing any of their weight. It's just maybe a hand-on-hand guidance or maybe just guiding them to lean forward, but before they do, they sit to stand to get that nose over toes movement, but not actually bearing any of the client's weight. When we get to a score 3 or moderate assistance, this is where it's more than just physical contact. It could be where our carer is actually having to lift up some of the client's weight or bear some of the client's weight. So this would be that the client is doing between 50 to 75% of the task. So they're needing quite a bit more assistance than your score 4. Then we get to our score 2, which is our maximal assistance. And this is where our client is doing 25 to 50% of the task. And this is going to be someone that is a lot more dependent. This is someone that's going to require quite a lot more assistance. Then we get to our score 1, which is our total assistance or completely dependent client. And this is where the client's doing less than 25% of effort, which means our carers are doing 75% or more of the transfer. So this could be someone that might be able to lift up their head or might be able to just hold on to something, but they're being rolled or lifted by the carers. And if you think of manual handling, we want to eliminate as much of the manual handling as possible because we don't want carers to, on a regular basis, be bearing someone's weight or be doing majority of the transfer. So that's where our assistive devices come into play. When we look at our 7 scores, we do have products that align with those scores. When we look at a score 7 to 6, this would be someone 7 doesn't use anything. 6 would be someone that maybe is using a walker, maybe using a walking stick, but they're not really using a hoist at this point. Then when we get to a score 5, where there's supervision or setup, this could be possibly someone that has a walker set up for them, or they might have pivot transfer aid placed in front of them, but there's no physical guidance. It's just verbal cueing. When we get to a FIM Score 4, where we just have that little bit of physical contact with no weight bearing, this could be something like our Oxford Up or Sarah Steady type of devices, which is also to stand transfer devices. Those will be really good because our client is still pulling themselves up into a stand. They're weight bearing by themselves, but you might just have a carer that's guiding them to lean forward or guiding them on where to place their hands on the handlebars. Then when we get to our score 3, this is where we might start looking at a bit more assistance with our Oxford Up, Sarah Steady types of devices, where the carers may be lifting the person up just slightly. But typically when we get to that stage, that's where we actually want to start getting the person to a standing hoist, because we actually don't want the carer to be lifting the person up, because that is not great for the carer. We want to try and eliminate that. So that's where the standing hoist comes into play. The person can still weight bear, but they need help with pulling up into that stand. And a standing hoist can do that because the standing hoist is actually pulling the person up. So they're holding on to handlebars and they're still weight bearing. When we get to a score 2, this could be someone that is kind of that in between of, could be using a standing hoist, or they could actually be using a full passive hoist or floor lifter or ceiling hoist. But your score 2 can still use the standing hoist depending on the sling that they use. So if they use a sling that's just a standing sling, so just a sling that goes around the waist and takes them into a full stand, they need to be with a FIM Score 3. But if you want to go down to a 2, you could potentially get a sling that actually has leg supports and the person can kind of weight bear in this kind of squatted position, but they're a lot more supported. So that's why we can go down to a 2 with that type of sling. Then when we go down to our score 1, this is going to be a passive lift, which is why we use our passive hoists, which would be our floor lifters and our ceiling hoists. Because this is a client that's essentially doing less than 25% of effort, which means my care is doing 75% or more. And we don't want that. We want to rather use an assistive device. We rather want to use our hoist to be doing the heavy lifting. And that's where our passive hoist comes in. Now, when you look at your slings, the scoring is going to work very similarly. You'll find that your full body slings, your slings with head supports that have really a high back support are going to be for your scores 1 to 2. And your standing slings, which are just slings that go around the waist, or your hygiene slings that have a really low back, those are going to be your scores 2 to 3. So that gives you a bit of an indication, but very important to look at the specific sling that you're looking at if there is a score assigned to it. But that's just a general principle that the more material you have, the lower scores you're accommodating, whereas less material, you can have a person in a higher score. If you're interested in using this tool and becoming credentialed to use the FIM score, it is important to receive training, and you will actually have to complete and pass a competency exam. And this training has to be provided by an AROC endorsed and accredited trainer. An AROC trainer would be someone from the Australasian Rehab Outcomes Center. And it's important that your credentialing lasts about 2 years. So you will need to reset your exam and to maintain the credentialing every 2 years, and you will have to redo the training every 4 years. But it is a very valuable tool. It has become more common to use it for your functional capacity assessment with the NDIS, whereas previously it was probably mostly used within rehab settings. But you can see now that there is the benefit of using it for selecting the appropriate assistive devices or manual handling equipment for your clients. Now for a recap of our episode on the functional independence measure or FIM score, we went through why is the FIM important and what it is, what are some of the key areas that it assesses, how OTs might use it in practice. We went a little bit more in detail into how it relates to selecting slings and hoists, and then how to get credentialed in the FIM. Thanks for joining us on Fast Intelligent Care. We hope you're leaving with fresh insights and tools to make a real impact as an occupational therapist. If you've got questions or topics you'd like us to cover, we'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to subscribe and join us every Tuesday for more ideas and strategies to deliver smarter, faster, and better care. Until next time, keep making a difference.